Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco City Council workshop this evening. It is 6:30, and we do have a workshop to start the evening off, and we do have Interim Director for the DPW, Travis Moore, with us, and we are going to discuss the Ferry Road Culvert Crossing Replacement. Travis?
Good evening. So I'd just like to start this off by saying that, we're in the permitting process right now for, as you all know, we got the main Infrastructure Adaptation Act that's going to replace the crossing as well as raise the intersection of Ferry Road and Seaside. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is just to get some direction on what we look for the long-term goal of that corridor so that we can get the permitting for the correct length to begin with. So I'm just going to go over a few things here. The project area, we're going to go over the design options, going to talk about cost, and then obviously we'll have some question and answers. If there's any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask them. So this is the crossing that we're talking about. It's the one on Ferry Road just out from Seaside. I think everybody is familiar. It's like a 9 by 25 foot box right now. So this is what we originally designed based on the direction that council gave DPW back a few years ago to design a sidewalk down Ferry Road from Bayview to Seaside. So that's what we originally went forward with the design for. So then we were talking about an alternative, which would be a 22 foot wide roadway, which would be two 11-foot lanes. And then we also were looking at a 10-foot multi-use path in that area. And then we certainly have looked just briefly on all the way up to Bayview. Yes, as anything gets bigger, there's more impacts to properties and stuff, but this is definitely something that we'd be able to do at this project location for future growth for sure. And then the other alternative would be the two 5-foot bike lanes and a 5-foot sidewalk. So this would be an additional 15 feet from the 22 feet of roadway width. So then when we look at project cost, so the original scope project for this structure, we had $750,000 for the replacement cost. The roadway and sidewalks was $407,000. The storm drain was $200,000. So the total project cost for the grant is $1.357 million. And then when you look at alternative one, which is the multi-use path, the original cost of the storm drain doesn't change in any of these alternatives, but the roadway cost changes by a little bit, and then the actual culvert crossing itself. So for alternative one, we're at about $128,000 more than the original scope project. And then for alternate two, we're at $248,600, or $248,600. So the difference for alternate one, right now the original scope was for a 30-foot long culvert, from shoulder to shoulder. Alternative one brings that to 39 feet, and then alternative two brings it to 44 feet. And with this, we're going to have some wetland impacts. So obviously we need to submit to an Army Corps permit. The alternative one keeps us through a local review process. Alternative two brings us to a different review process. Could take a little bit longer, and we could get a little bit of pushback on, you don't have accommodations there now. You're permitting for a larger structure. They're going to be looking for some information from us on why we're looking to go the length that we're looking. But that's why we're here having this conversation now, to get our long-range goal of that corridor, what we think that's going to look like, 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and just so that we get the design done, get the permit done correctly, and put the right size structure there right now. And this isn't, we did some borings in that location, and based on the soils, we're going to be required to drive H-piles, which are steel columns that this structure will then have a pile cap of, like a concrete foundation, and then the structure itself will sit on top of that. So it's something that we need to get the size right now, because down the road to drive more piles and do an extra pile cap, it's not very cost effective. So that's all that I have right now. I can bring up different, sections of the plans. We can talk through cost.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments for Director Moore? Councilor Berman, then Councilor Edwards.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this. Super exciting project. Really grateful for the chance to talk about it. Really excited about all the options. So really appreciate it. I have a number of comments and questions personally, and then we got an email from a member of the BPAC, and I'd like to pass some of his questions along too, if that's okay. So part of my question is about the nature of the bike lanes, and these would just come right across the culverts, and how does that fit in with the rest of the road and the intersection, right? Is it just, the on and off of the bike lanes, is that going to add safety? Is that going to take away safety, and kind of what the structure is there? A second question I have is about the timing of the decision. And I feel like I'm not expert on some of these things, but we have a lot of citizens who might be really interested in weighing in. And do you need to know now, or would it be possible to bring this to a committee, like maybe the BPAC, and get some public feedback that way?
So we're in the permit process now. Our consultant is kind of pushing us right now to get a final width on what we're looking for. Our goal is to get this thing permitted and get it advertised this summer for potentially fall construction. So time is of the essence, but it's not to say that we can't talk about it, later on this month at the joint traffic safety BPAC meeting.
That might be a good opportunity. Do you foresee a future in which there could be bike lanes down Ferry Road?
So looking at that, we just did a high-level overview. So if you're going in town, coming from the beach, driving up, to Main Street, on the left-hand side, there's certainly some houses there that are fairly close to the roadway. Yep. So if you add an extra 5 feet, we haven't looked at it and vetted everything out, but you get kind of tight on, can people, get vehicles in their yards without, impacting those bike lanes, and it gets tight on that side for sure.
And do I also understand correctly that if you did the 5-foot bike lanes on both sides, they would just be painted on, there'd be no physical barrier between traffic and those bike lanes?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep. At this location, that's really all that we have for an option.
Yeah. So my general sense is, we have long-term goals for the Ferry Road sidewalk that Public Works has designed. Tying into that would be my eventual long-term goal if we can complete that project. And that there's not much added with those, just a short distance of 5-foot bike lanes painted onto the road. That the 10-foot multi-use path kind of separated from the road might provide enough access for bikes and pedestrians, increase safety, and then eventually tie in with that sidewalk. I do have a couple other questions, though from the public that I think haven't been addressed so far. One of these is, have 10-foot roadways been considered instead of, you have 22 feet of roadway? Have you thought about narrowing that into 10 feet lanes on each side? I guess there's some data from the National Organization of City Transportation Officials that slows traffic and is generally safer. And then second, if we do bike lanes, how does the transition come and go from that in order to guide bikes and traffic safely? Yep.
So to answer the first question, is the 10-foot bike lanes where based on the corridor priority that this is, because it is a state route 9, we would be allowed to go down to 10-foot bike lanes. That would need to be approved by DOT, but typically if it's due to pedestrian and bicycle, accommodations, it's usually allowed, but it certainly fits that corridor that 10-foot lanes could be looked at for sure.
Okay, yeah, I think that there might be some advantage to that, just in terms of traffic slowing and calming. It's a high pedestrian intersection. Yeah.
Yep. And as far as the 5-foot bike lanes, how to start and stop them, that's always the question when you're building this stuff out. You know, you got to start somewhere, you got to stop somewhere, kind of like North Street. What we did there is right at the railroad tracks is where the bike lanes start, heading down towards Main Street. We started the bike lanes right there at the railroad tracks, and then when we got to like Vernon Street, we kind of brought them in as a shared lane, and then that's where they extinguish. You know, when coming the other way, kind of the same thing. We had a 5-foot bike lane that's painted, and we just kind of tapered that back in, and then that, you know, the bicyclists are back in the roadway.
Okay. Yeah. So I think generally my sense is the one 10-foot path by does as well. But if you can find a time to bring this to the BPAC and Traffic Safety Committee joint meeting or BPAC meeting, I think some additional public feedback would really be useful. Yep. I know a lot of the residents are probably going to care. Yeah,
and I think the 10-foot multi-use path too. I mean, if you have 2 5-foot bike lanes and, you know, even a 10-foot lane, you got 15 feet of pavement on each side of that yellow line. If there's nobody in that bike lane, I mean, that's going to feel nice and wide, and you know what happens when you have nice, straight, wide roads. People tend to speed up.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah, and the physical barrier between the path and the road is really, I think, critical for safety.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
And it would be on curb line, like up through this project area, but once you get past, like up towards like the landing and beyond, I think we could get a esplanade in there, which would help accommodate for mailboxes, utility poles, stuff like that.
Yeah, when you say curb line, though, there'll be a raised curb,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's really helpful.
Yep.
Councilor Edwards?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Would you, I know it's far down the way, would you anticipate any night construction or complete road closures while this is happening?
Yep, so for this project, there definitely would be a road closure. It would pretty much be all residents would still be able to get in and out of their properties. But during the completion of the crossing itself, the road would be closed. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And as far as night construction, I don't see, there may be later evenings, but I don't see overnight construction. Yep.
Thank you. Just for clarification purposes, can you remind us how much was the grant, and is this fully, either option going to be covered by the grant, or will there be any local funding?
Yep, so the grant was $1.35 million with a $100,000 local match. In that grant, we had that 5-foot sidewalk that was scoped in that. So if we went with alternate 1 or 2, there would be additional costs above and beyond the grant. So the 10-foot multi-use path would be an additional $128,000. And then if we went with the 5-foot bike lanes and the 5-foot sidewalk, that'd be an additional $248,000.
On top of our 100,000 original match, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Hewitt? Councilor Johnston after?
Quick question. When you're talking about the larger culvert, does that help impact the amount of flooding if there were a storm or tidal overrun?
So that crossing there, that's not considered a stream, it's considered an estuary. So the water comes up, goes in there. It's all about water storage. The culvert crossing itself isn't going to hold back any more water. It's going to be scoped a little bit larger, so if anything, water would go in a little bit quicker and come back out a little bit quicker.
Thank you.
Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I believe Councilor Berman and the mayor asked majority of my questions, but just for the benefit of the public and myself, on alternate 1, this 10-foot multi-use lane, that would be a bicyclist would use that as well as a pedestrian, correct?
Correct. Yep,
There would not be an additional bike lane in the actual roadway.
correct,
And the other one is a sidewalk with 2 bike lanes.
correct. Yep. And some bicyclists may still choose to bike in the lane itself, but the multi-use path is to accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians.
And I think you confirmed this at the beginning of your presentation, but the question I had was, with the current configuration of the right-of-way, if we went with alternate 2, I guess it is, or no, 1, there's enough right-of-way to continue it the full way up to Bayview?
So we have some easements that are needed to do the 5-foot sidewalk. This would, expand upon them. We would need, some larger easements. Depending on what we can do with Esplanade and utility poles, there may be utility easements that are needed as well, but, there's easements that are needed for the 5-foot sidewalk.
Okay, but like I said, in your opinion, it's doable with the terrain and all that, because I know that the ditch and everything before was an issue, and we previously discussed sidewalks.
Yep.
I just want to make sure if we go this direction, long-term, we can continue whatever we do and not have a, 10-foot, then go back to 2.5. But otherwise, it sounds good, and I would also support Councilor Berman's suggestion that goes to the BPAC and traffic safety joint meeting.
Anyone else? Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. I'll third the vote to get it to BPAC, and the more, I think, public input we have, the better off we'll be in the end result, so I would encourage that as well. The only question I had that hasn't been answered yet is if you, beginning on the bottom of page 4 of the handout that came with the memorandum itself, there's and I guess, this is a question or a comment for City Administrator Bahenko, and I trust that he's thought this through, but there's a fair amount of responsibility on staff to report and coordinate. I noticed that Emily Cole Prescott's name is mentioned as the contact. So my only other concern would be bandwidth of opportunity to manage the project, and I'm assuming that's been vetted and it's okay.
I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we can work with Deputy Chief Huntress to get BPAC, possibly get this on the agenda for the next upcoming Traffic Safety Committee meeting. And we'll have that discussed.
Thank you, Director.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to call the City Council meeting to order at 6:48 for March 3rd, 2025. Would like to make recognition of all members present this evening, including City Administrator Bahenko. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to item 4 this evening. There is no general. Item number 5 is committee correspondence to council. Are there any councilors with any updates? Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. I just want to publicly announce that the Ad hoc Grievance Committee will be meeting Wednesday evening at 5 p.m. in the first floor conference room to continue our deliberations.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Edwards?
Aid Friendly Saco is partnering with Sophie at the library, as well as the Saco Police and Fire Department's Communications Department and Saco Parks and Rec to bring 3 informational sessions about emergency preparedness for older residents in March this month. So the first workshop is on the 5th, and that's already sold out. So there are 2 other opportunities, March 17th and March 31st, and you can call Age Friendly Saco to register for a session at 730-5029. They will cover essential topics on how to prepare for disasters and emergency situations. But attendees will also receive a backpack go bag that will contain such items needed in the event of a disaster, such as an emergency radio, first aid kit, water filter, lantern, and many other helpful essentials. Thank you.
Thank you. I've seen the backpacks and great appreciation to Age Friendly for that. It's a great collection of items. Okay, anyone else? Okay, moving on to item 6 this evening. It is public comment. If there is any member of the public wishing to speak, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail, councilors, City Administrator Bohenko. I'm David Plavin. I live at 36 Lower Beach Road. I'm also the Vice President of Save Our Shores Saco Bay. It's been almost a year since we sat in front of you to conduct a workshop on things that we could do to better strengthen and make our coastline a little bit more resilient and more sustainable. And we discussed 3 subjects that night. The first was the county dredge, which we're working on, and Kevin is going to address that in a moment. Second was coastal sand dune damage, and we haven't really seen a whole lot in that area either. We really need a plan. We need a way to reach out to residents that want to do dune replenishment or dune replantings and find a way that we can help them. I think other communities have taken steps to do that. To my knowledge, we have not, and we should be. The last subject was seawalls. The city seawall cycle has been to bring an excavator in every spring, pick up rocks that have fallen out of the seawall onto the beach, put them back into the seawall, and then they fall out again. And I think it's time that we look for a way to break this cycle, that we look to maybe re-engineer the seawall in such a way that it's a little stronger, can withstand greater impact from storms. Several local residents have taken it into their own hands to strengthen the tops of the seawalls. If you walk down Surf Street, or what was once Surf Street, you'll see that many of us have brought an excavator in and really done an amazing job, in my opinion, of making those seawalls more resilient, at least at the top part of them. But we need to do work to the entire seawall. There's actually state legislation right now to enable seawalls to be raised 2 feet. It met with some objection from DEP. One of their suggestions was that seawalls need to be moved back because they are erosive. And if you look at our seawall, you could easily take a couple feet out of the bottom where there's just rocks all over the place. And I think it would make sense to look at a re-engineered seawall, and we would not have to maybe go through the same cycle over and over again. The last thing I want to mention is the state of the beach. I walked the beach recently. There's chunks of tar, concrete, geotubes that have been ripped apart, rusted out street signs. The beach needs to be cleaned, and it needs to be maintained. I think it behooves all of us to have a beach that we can be proud of. You look at other communities and what they're doing, and that we should not be the one that has a beach strewn with all these pieces of debris on it. So we'd be willing to work with the city to do a cleanup. I think we need to clean up desperately, and I'm hoping that we can do things and find a way to maybe be able to take seaweed off the beach too. Last year we had an inundation of seaweed, especially at Camp Ellis and Ferry Beach, that just made those beaches not unusable, but certainly detracted from them. So I'm asking that we take a look at that as well. And I have 20 seconds left. I wanted
That's actually 20 over.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm going to go over more. I wanted to make council aware of the fact that on March 17th, 2 weeks from today, that the city and Save Our Shores is going to have a symposium right here at 9:30 in the morning. We have an incredible panel of speakers from government, science, to talk about all this, and it's going to be streamed live on the city's YouTube page, and it's also going to be recorded so you can see it, but if you can also come in person, I think it's going to be a very interesting and hopefully fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, David.
What do I got, 2 minutes now?
Yeah, we subtract from him.
Kevin Roach, 18 Vines Road, president of S-West Saco Bay. Yes, this was to combine, so we wouldn't combine to 6 minutes, but give me 7, I think. Well, first off, thank you to the city for the sand that was put down at the corner. That was only 70 cubic yards, and which was great because our Facebook site at SOS got the most likes just for the 70 cubic yards versus the announcement that we were trying to go for like 1,500 cubic yards or 5,000. So everything makes a difference. So thank you for that. There were many reasons why there wasn't a dredge this year. This season. I won't get into that too much, but it just wasn't worth the city and the county efforts and money for the limited dredging we would have gotten this year. So all hands on deck for November. Just last Wednesday, I don't know if there's an announcement made to you guys that the surveyors were out with the county to assess the quantity of sand, and that's what we need to go for, is first know how much sand there is and get as much sand as possible out there. Permitting, that is covered by the county. So the money that's $150K, they are doing that. So we need our resources kept for what I'm coming up right now here is the county's put in for Wells, Old Orchard, and Saco to benefit from the FEMA storm relief from last January. At first, it was told that could be up to $1 million of contribution from the municipalities. I think that's going to be told, they're going to try to get it in for like $425,000. And whether Saco is 1/3 responsible, that could be the $150,000. But I want to give the heads up right now that in case it's more, we need to be ready for that. It's budget season, so there's basically 3 ways to be ready for that. One is to maybe put something in this budget. I'll be back maybe before you guys in April. Maybe it's an amendment during the year if it does come up, or something out of the capital or something to be done. But I want to make it clear, though, we got lucky this year. We got lucky. That road is still open down there. All right? So, and usually the conservative estimates are to maintain it down there is $250,000 of time and money of public works. So I think it still would be a money savings if we need to contribute money to the county dredging of next November. And I'll say November. We go first. we need to be ready for November. And I thank you for your efforts to get us there.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, not seeing anyone seeking any recognition. Moving on to item 7, the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 24th, 2025?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Aye.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Abstain?
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, moving on to item 8 this evening. That is consent items, and there are no items this evening. Item 9 is action items. We have 1 this evening, and that is item A, which is 1 reading for the curbside solid waste collection contract, 5-year extension. That is Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The curbside municipal solid waste and recycling collection contract with Casella Waste expires on June 30th, 2025. Public Works has negotiated a potential 5-year extension with Casella Waste with a flat rate increase of 5% per year. This contract contains a fuel surcharge provision due to the fuel cost variability, where the cost of diesel fuel floor price is over $3.90 per gallon. Be it ordered that the council approve a 5-year extension to the current curbside solid waste collection contract. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Johnston. Any discussion on the item? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item 10, that's new business this evening, and we do have 2 items. The first item up is item A, and that is a I-95 Ocean Park Road resolution update. And City Administrator Behenko?
So, as a result of the public input session and conversations with the mayor and others, there is a revised resolution. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Page 25.
Yep, I got it. Yeah, so there is a resolution that we put forward for the council to look at and review, and tonight, because it's new business, we're not asking for any action, so I would ask the council to maybe give me any input as to what you feel about the resolution. I know there's the provision that, the issue dealing with Ocean Park Road is the primary change to the resolution. Is there any questions or input?
Thank you. Just so everyone knows that we have added the paragraph 5 that the City of Saco has concerns with Exit 2A proposal design, and that we require access, restricts access, to the Ocean Park Road, and we are asking that be removed from the proposal. Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I heard the feedback about Exit 2A and the access to Ocean Park Road and agree with much of it. I also heard in the presentation that that's one of our highest crash and most dangerous intersections that we have in the city, a situation that will only be exacerbated as traffic continues to increase. And so I find this language to be a little bit strong for my taste in that we're requiring it to be maintained. What I would prefer if that we ask for investigations into the possibility of maintaining that access. I'm not sure that I would trade lives for that access, if that's really what it comes down to. What I'd prefer is if there are safer solutions, different timing of lights, different engineering solutions that allow safety improvements and access, that's obviously preferable. But if it's do nothing, I'm not sure that's an acceptable solution either. And so for me, I would like us to investigate the possibility of maintaining access to Ocean Park Road and or do further studies on other safety improvements that would maintain access to Ocean Park Road would be wording that I would prefer.
So I would ask if you do have some wording that you'd like to see in there to provide it to me.
I'm happy to send you an email.
Yeah, and this was the starting point. I know so that we could endorse the remaining part of the project. Because I think Old Orchard Beach is very interested in their portion, and then, of course, the roundabout. So this is a first look at it, and that's why it's here, for your input.
No, I greatly appreciate the efforts and totally agree with the sentiment, and I heard a lot about maintaining the access, so I absolutely understand and appreciate what we're trying to do.
Looking for any other input would be helpful.
Councilor Hewitt?
Is there going to be any study regarding, they said their study went till Dunkin' Donuts, and if cars did have to take a right, if there isn't access to Ocean Park Road, they would have to continue down to King Street to make the left, which would take them through the Thornton Academy, that intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any, it doesn't appear there's been any study of the impact on those neighborhoods behind there if people cut through?
Not to my knowledge.
Could that be included?
We could ask, I suppose, we could ask, but I don't want to clutter the resolution too much, but we could do a letter, separate letter to talk about what I know that during the public information session, there were excellent notes kept, and what we could do is deal with the resolution and then also provide a letter that would outline some of these other issues. I don't think we want to put specifics in the resolution, but we can get a letter that would express our concern and ask for some more study area.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor Gunn? Then Counselor Hatch.
I think Councilor Hatch was first, actually. I don't want to interrupt.
Counselor Hatch?
Thank you, Councilor Gunn. Yeah, I just, it sounded like the last comment was somewhat contradictory. If we are asking to keep the access to Ocean Park Road open, then I think a studying of a right turn only is moot, but.
Right, but I think what you need to understand is if they decide they want to go forward with closing that, I think that's what Counselor, that's what I thought you were expressing.
Thank you.
So we can articulate that in any conversation or any letter that we send, that in the event that Ocean Park Road access is closed and there's right turn only, then we need to have an extension on the study.
That sounds reasonable. And then I just want to make a final editorial comment. I've been pondering this since we've been discussing it, and I'm in total agreement with the issues that have been brought forth, but I find it somewhat interesting that we have crash sites that are effectively the cause of driver behavior, and we have to spend $16 million to stop people from driving crazy. So, and I know that's a very simplified explanation, but I just find it amazing that we have to spend this much money to try to correct driver behavior. I think if we had folks who understood what a yield sign, a red yield sign, is supposed to do, and a caution sign for a left-hand turn, what that's supposed to do, and pay attention to speeding signs on I-95 like they're supposed to, I suspect, I don't think it would eliminate all the crashes, but I think it would have a significant impact. So I just find it somewhat interesting that we have to sit here and think about spending millions of dollars to address a problem that could easily be partially solved by better driver behavior. So, just my own opinion. Thank you.
Counselor Gunn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When it comes to mitigation efforts for that intersection to actually improve public safety, I don't know if it's prudent to sort of fold it into the conversation we're having with the DOT vis-a-vis Old Orchard Beach, or to have our own separate conversation, because it is our side of the line, and anything that we could do to help the traffic, help improve public safety in that area, I think would fall to us. And frankly, it would be probably outside the scope of anything Old Orchard Beach would be interested in. And, for example, solutions such as re-examining the lights of that intersection. I know there was pushback from former staff a couple of years ago on that. That discussion never reached council level. I don't see anything binding by former staff's opinion on that. I see nothing in that intersection that is unusual enough that I don't think it would behoove a re-examination of that intersection being relit, make it a full four-way stop, similar to the sort of like off the top of my head how the Bedford exit is down by Bedford Crossing. Suggestions were made about making legal what people going home on exit 2A have already done by themselves, which is turning that lane into a de facto two-lane, left lane, going straight or right turn lane avenue to sort of keep themselves from being backed up halfway into 195. That's certainly another thing. The third solution, which will obviously require discussions with the DOT, is perhaps re-examining and lowering the speeding limit on 195 back to its original 50 miles an hour. I always thought that raising it to 60 was more of a cop-out on behalf of the state officials, though, and I don't see why it was prudent to begin with, because all it does is encourage the poor behavior, the aggressive driving in that situation. And of course, the fourth one would be obviously stepped up enforcement, whether it's, asking state police to have more of a presence on 195, to have regular presence of our own police down on that island or in the Hannaford parking lot or wherever it would be prudent to have presence there during the high crash times and rush hour. That being said, because we are going into a potential agreement, and if this agreement goes forward and we are essentially outvoted, for lack of a better term, and they decide to keep 2A closed per their plan, our only potential veto of that would be actually vetoing our end of the funding at some point in the future, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, however long this thing takes. And that's not a blanket veto, because obviously Old Orchard Beach is a municipality just like us. They're perfectly able to find their own funding in case we decide to pull the plug. So I thought as a good compromise, it would be, look, we're going to put our cards on the table and say 2A is off the table, but we are more than open to fixing everything else regards that intersection, not to mention being a partner for the rest of the project, because the rest of the project, including improving the sight lines of 2B, are perfectly prudent, though, but I didn't see the logic on 2A, though, and I honestly think having that strong language from the get-go is smart, though, because you don't want to get into a conversation where years and years pass, though, where we agree to something where in the end we're not going to fund it, though, because it makes us look like we have bad faith in the very end, when at the beginning we put our cards on the table and say, look, the rest of it makes perfect sense, but 2A does not. And I think be clear and concise about that from the get-go is going to have a much better process for everybody going forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the time the different agencies spent on this, but myself, anyway, I still am wrestling with the issue that is front and center to me, which is we had this plan that was presented to us as an elected official and a citizen of the community. We kind of were brought in at the 11th hour, and now we have this plan that I feel as though it's just like sign off on this, we'll deal with the rest later. And I'll just tell you that I've been around here long enough, went through this previously with the Exit 5. We were told, don't worry, there's time later for input. None of the input, and again, speaking for myself, I had what I considered legitimate concerns about the pedestrian safety of that corridor totally glossed over. The state basically said, we're doing this, and we're going to live with that. Now, it might improve the traffic situation out there, but it's certainly not going to improve the pedestrian, kids walking to SMS and what have you. So when I look at this plan or this resolution, which again, resolution is saying that we, the elected body, is resolving to do this. We're resolving to do it as the state has presented to us. So for starters, I'm not even certain that the state would accept our item 5 here. I have experience with this with the Army Corps, where a prior council tried to redraft certain language, and they told us to go pound sand, several times, actually. So there was no pun intended, but it worked out well. So again, I look at words, they have meaning. When it says formally accepts the final interstate I-95 or 195, to me that says we're accepting this study. Yeah, you'll have input later on, whatever that means, but once I approve this, or we as an elected body approve it, we're saying we accept their plan. I'm still uncertain about the total cost. It says to be at least 10% of the project cost. Is that the total cost or just our, whatever it was, $600,000 or roughly of the project? So that, for me, is hard to approve when I'm not certain about what I'm getting into. And again, you look at 2, it says Town of Old Orchard Beach and the City of Saco understands the implementation will involve a future commitment. Okay, so if we're approving this, we're saying we understand that, but I don't understand it, what that cost is. You know, and like I said, further input, that's not the same as further study, which is what I'm hearing from other counselors. It's what I've been saying from the beginning, particularly after last week's meeting where I heard it from one of the officials that stated that they didn't restudy this intersection at all. They used old data from 2019 and just carried it over. Lots changed since 2019. So I have concerns with that. And then additionally, it's kind of ironic that we talk about a pathway on the ferry road, and then the next item before us is also regionalization or thinking, forward thinking about, you know, our road network. And as former planner Mr. Hamlin stated at that public hearing, it's a lost opportunity to not look at that whole corridor. As I said several weeks ago, when this did come before traffic safety, and I mean very briefly, the indication was that we would kind of look at that whole corridor. That's why we rejected a crosswalk, as I recall, at the end of Cumberland Ave, because the thought was, well, someday we're going to have this, again, full corridor reviewed, and that's what I'm looking for myself. As I've said, well, at least to other counselors, I spent a lot of time there as a youth. It was, again, one of my friends lived right there on Ocean Park Road. It was crazy to walk down there or rollerblade like I used to. That was 25 years ago. It's just as bad, if not worse. We designated this corridor as part of the downtown TIF with the understanding that this was ripe for growth and the type of development we wanted, and therefore we incorporated it into the TIF district so we could make those investments to have that type of growth. And there has been some, different types of development there, but it's a corridor, it's a gateway, it's one of our several gateways to, our community and to Old Orchard Beach's community. I just think it would be a huge missed opportunity to not do this right the first time, and instead of coming back 25 years from now and saying, well, maybe we can look at it again. So that's, again, just me as 1/7 of council, my feelings on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson, and that's why we're trying to get at least the wording. We've heard the comments from public, we've heard the comments from council. Need to get the vote, yes or no. One way or another, we need to be able to get this presented to council. So, City Administrator, question that I had asked when we were discussing this is, have we found out yet where the City of Old Orchard has already signed? Will this need to be re-signed by Old Orchard as well, or will this actually be done as a possible amendment to the resolution?
So I sent over this copy of this resolution to Old Orchard Beach, to the town manager. We can do it one of two ways. We can have our own resolution, which is fine. I did briefly talk to the town manager. I don't want to commit her any which way because I haven't had anything in writing from her, but I don't think they would have any issue, and I'm not saying this particular language on item 5. It would probably be, I'd send it over to her once we have some new language and see if they had any issue. I think there might be a couple things we can do within the resolution. I'll look at it again. I know that Councilor Johnson has concerns, and I don't know if there's anything we can beef up in here to mitigate some of those concerns. It might even be something to the effect where we talk about the funding level. We could probably do something to wordsmith that so that we don't ultimately commit ourselves, but I'll have to take a look at it.
Councilor Berman?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm wondering if we can get some clarity on the process from here, because as I understood from the last meeting, there's actually 2 additional phases that both require seeking funding. There's going to be a design and engineering phase that funding needs to be required for, and then there would be the construction and implementation phase, both of which I view as opportunities for additional input, for design refinement, and also, of course, opportunities that we may not pass that hurdle, as those plans, as I understand it, require federal funds. So my understanding is this resolution merely launches the next phase of that process, which is really the formal design and engineering phase, which, as we've seen from other big projects, a lot can change during that phase too.
The key is that it is a feasibility study. It's the very beginning. I know that Councilor Johnson has a lot of history with a lot of these things, and sometimes, unless you're on top of it, they might just move ahead. The inertia might just move everything ahead. So I think I would hold his concerns as well. I also want to be concerned with the 10% local match. Without seeing the numbers, it would be very difficult. So I'm looking at this resolution, and there might be a way to talk about limiting that. So I'll take a look at that and maybe do some additional, for example, and I don't want to get into a conversation about redoing the whole thing tonight, but where on the second item it says Town of Old Orchard Beach and the City of Saco understands the implementation will involve future commitment of local Town of Old Orchard and Saco Beach funding, period. So that we don't commit ourselves to where it says to be at least 10% of project costs. Just put a period on funded, where it says the City of Saco funding anticipated, period. Because how do we know? We don't know. Do we know that there might not be some additional funding that might come through from another source? I don't know. So we could put a period right there and just put a strike through on the other area so that does not ultimately commit us to at least 10%. So that's something I would maybe put forward for next week so that that might help a little bit, but doesn't commit us. None of this really commits us to anything. I mean, in terms of from the city's perspective, that's going to be for a council really further down the road. But I think this type of language is important to send off the way this council feels. So, you're the council right now, so you need to send it in a way that you feel comfortable. And, this project probably wouldn't even get started until probably 2032 or thereabouts, maybe longer than that. But the fact is, this council sitting right now, this council has its view on this, and this council should decide how they want to craft this resolution.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so if you have any recommendations for wording or any changes that you would like to see, please send that over to City Administrator this week.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item B this evening. It is a memorandum of agreement, an MOA, to form a partnership to conduct a corridor study of the U.S. Route 1 from Biddeford to Freeport, and it is the Reimagining Route 1 initiative.
I would ask that Director Prescott come forward to discuss this matter.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having this on the agenda. It's a partnership agreement to study the corridor of Route 1. It involves the municipalities from Biddeford to Freeport. There is no obligation for funding from Saco at this point, other than you will be asked to contribute staff time from the planning department. We thought it was important to bring this to you to let you know about the projects starting. They're going to be finishing up toward the end of the year. There's a Reimagining Route 1 fact sheet in there as well. This is part of the UPWP funding through GPCOG PACS program. And we already have started collecting some data and working toward assisting as much as possible so that we can take a holistic view of the whole corridor of the many communities involved. Maine DOT as well as GPCOG will also be involved and will be partners on this agreement, as well as the municipalities. Really, this is to designate a point of contact, establish how timelines will work. So no one's waiting too long for information among all the municipalities, and really try to organize the parties involved so the study can come to fruition. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. We will make sure this is coordinated well with our Portland Road master planning efforts. It's important to note that the Portland Road master plan also is being done by GPCOG and PAX. We have a consultant there who came out and spoke with you about a month or so ago. So they were well aware about the data collection and the ongoings of this study as well. So some nice synergies here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I think you just answered my question, so kudos to that. But yeah, when I first read this several times, I wasn't really certain what the purpose was, but I think you just clarified that really the only ask here is that we're creating the contact. There's no real obligation outside of that.
Contact and data sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Councilor Hatch?
Yeah, I just popped in my head. You know, when you talk about synergies and trying to, we just talked about an intersection that's on Route 1, and we got DOT involved in that one and DOT involved in the other one. Is it possible we could get those folks talking to each other?
Anything's possible, right? But
Okay, great, because there could be a better alternative to that intersection than we can even imagine, because I'm not a traffic engineer. I can only come up with reactions on how I drive, and I do try to pay attention to the various signs and speed limits. But here's a classic example of a bigger project that has a lot of merit, and this intersection is right smack dab in the middle of it. So I just throw that out for whatever it's worth.
I'll definitely share that with the GPCOG and PAX folks, just so we're all aware. They will be prioritizing certain areas of the corridor, so there's probably going to be areas that they really want to take a look at that probably have a lot of concerns with traffic and how they look, and whether they can be gateways or not. So,
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Gunn?
As part of this study, is there anything particularly in terms of areas of Route 1 that GPCOG PAX is looking at, or is it parallel to pretty much what they're doing with long-range planning?
I think it's going to have some crossover into what they're doing with long-range planning committee as well. But this is going to look more high level at the whole corridor. So we're going to get some recommendations, a fair amount from that Portland Road study that we're doing, the master plan with long-range planning committee, that'll be more focused on our section of Route 1 on Portland Road. But this study will give recommendations for the whole corridor for all the 9 communities involved. So it's a little more zoomed out picture.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so this item will come back to council as an MOA for approval and signature, correct?
For one reading for
one
March
reading.
10th is what I was anticipating.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 11 is the administrative update. City Administrator Bahenko.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item I'd like to report on is the update from the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers is very happy to report that the team continues to work on what they are calling 65% level of design. The work includes defining stone sizes, discussing and deciding upon specifics of the foundation for the spur jetty, refining dimensions of the jetty, and putting this all in plan sheets that will be used for the eventual construction contract. We are also working on specification packages and which describe in more exact terms how the work will be conducted by the contractor. Other work that will be continuing after 65% design to complete includes completing state permits and updating the cost estimates for the spur jetty construction. Also, Jennifer Thalheiser, Chief of Navigation for the district and project manager for this project, will be attending the Saco Bay Symposium on March 17th, and if time permits, will be available to answer any questions on the status of the project. Also, we have an RFP. The City of Saco is soliciting bids for hot mix asphalt for the period April 1st, 2025 to April 1st, 2026. Bids will be accepted until 1 p.m. on Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. Please visit the city's website under bids and RFPs for additional details. On March 10th, we'll be taking action on the resolution relative to Ocean Park Road resolution, memorandum of agreement to form partnership to conduct corridor study of US Route 1 from Biddeford to Freeport, reimagining Route 1 initiative. That's all I have. If there are any questions from the council, I'll try to answer those.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for the city administrator? Okay, not seeing any, thank you. Moving on to item 12 this evening, that is council discussion and comment. Any councilors wishing to speak? Okay, not seeing anyone. I do have an update that I'd like to share. Very, very good news, happy news. Reporting that LD 79, which is our resolution to rename the Biddeford-Saco Bridge to the General Wallace-Nutting Bridge, did pass, and it has been moved to the House. We do not have a date for the House, but we had an excellent public hearing session. Senator Ingerson from Biddeford, Senator Bailey from Saco, both represented in support for it, as well as Representative Copeland from Saco and Biddeford Councilor Neva Gross. So thank you to all of them for stepping up, putting in their support, and we will keep you updated on the further movement of this. Oh, and it was also noted that both of General Nutting's daughters were in attendance as well, and they were very excited and happy that this was going to hopefully go through. Okay, moving on to item 13, that is executive session. Is there a motion? Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Be it ordered that the City Council enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, Section 405(6). I'm going to flip my page. A, personnel matters.
Thank you. Motion has been made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to enter executive session at 7:32 passes, 7-0. We will be downstairs in the conference room. Everybody, is there a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
Motion made by Counselor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Edwards. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to exit executive session at 8:13 passes 7-0. Is there a report?
No report.
Thank you. Okay, that now takes us to item 14 this night, item 15, and that is an adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Edwards. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn at 8:13 passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.